Welcome to Current Affairs Taiwan. All right, Mike, what do we got up on the show today?
Well, we got another list of great stuff. The DPP legislator introduced a bill to change some of the language in the goal for national unification. And surprise, surprise, somebody we didn't expect supports that bill. Then Taiwan withdrew from the World Health Assembly, the whole attempt to get it a seat on there. Taiwan said, let's put a hold on that. And we'll discuss some reasons why they might have done that. We talk about the Han Guoyu recall. Han, the mayor of Kaohsiung, recalled on June 6, instructing his followers not to go to the polls. And the DPP's attempts to get the irrigation and farmers and fishermen's cooperatives under control are ongoing. So that will be interesting to talk about and see in the future. We take a quick pass at the gay marriage at the 1-year anniversary. And finally, we talk about the cabinet resignation on Thursday and mention some names that might be given interesting positions. Stay tuned, folks. It's going to be another great show. All right, folks. Welcome to another edition of Current Affairs Taiwan. I'm Michael Turton, and my cohort over here is Donovan Smith.
Yeah, great to be here.
Yeah, looking forward to another good show today. So what's on tap? The World Health Assembly. Big news out today when Taiwan withdrawing from its effort to get seated there as an observer this year. Why do you think that was?
Well, man, that really kind of throws us, doesn't it? I mean, I was looking at, when I'm looking at this, this was going to be a real interesting battle because it was going to really show who supported Taiwan and who was cowering to China. That was the real big vote. So it was really kind of looking forward to this. I have a couple of guesses here or theories.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is that India is supposed to be taking over the WHO Executive Committee for the next 3 years.
Right.
And there's been I've noticed a lot of editorials coming out of India that India should be more supportive of Taiwan. And of course, There's been a lot of ongoing tension between India and China. So Taiwan may be waiting for that to happen. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that Tedros is out. We don't know here, but that's one possibility. Now, another thing is I do think that Taiwan wants to show they're the good guy. We're in the middle of a pandemic, so the WHO should be focused on that. And number 3, and this is the kicker one, I think, is that I saw in The Guardian today, now 120 countries, including Russia, are going to demand that China open up and allow inspectors into Wuhan to try and figure out where the virus came from.
Right.
So essentially, I think that at this session, Taiwan's going to take a step back because China's going to get the crap beat out of them over this issue. And China's going to do one of two things, right? They're going to either react very badly, and my bet is odds on that's what they're going to do. In which case, any future vote on Taiwan, people are going to be pissed off at China's response here. Or China's going to acquiesce, in which case a lot of countries will realize that, we can beat China. And they'll be more confident in supporting Taiwan next time.
Yeah. I think a little ripple of shock went through Twitter when the Russians said they were all for the inspection.
A Twitter spasm.
Yeah. It was like watching a crowd shy away from a firecracker thrown in the center of it. So that was big news. If you followed some of the debates, you could see where a lot of people who studied international law have said actually Tedros has the authority to appoint an observer to the WHO, to the World Health Assembly, but the WHO and clearly probably the UN as well seem to have internalized the idea that Taiwan is part of China. And so fighting that is going to be very difficult in the next few years. But with so many nations coming out in this, I think it's going to get easier. Mm-hmm. So let's see what else we got going on today. Well, speaking of China, a DPP legislator offered a bill which would remove all the unification language from the Constitution, from the legal system. Yeah, from the national goal. That's it. Yeah. And so then he withdrew it, undoubtedly at the behest of higher ups in the DPP. This is not something that Tsai Ing-wen would probably support, right? She's very cautious and incremental and not radical at all. And then who came out in support of it? Surprisingly,
Well, yeah. I mean, the responses. When that first came out, I watched this really closely because where all the various actors came out on this would be very telling. The
right?
PRC came out exactly as expected. They were hostile. The Taiwan State Building Party has come out and said they're going to, now that the DPP lawmakers pulled it, they're going to introduce their own legislation. No surprise there.
Nope.
The KMT said they wouldn't obstruct it, but questioned the timing and said more discussion was needed, which was interesting because they basically kind of punted, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, they got to go back to the mainstream, and they're not going to do it objecting to law like this.
Yes. Yeah, because it's basically reality. The DPP response I thought was very interesting. And I think that you're right that it's basically Tsai Ing-wen being cautious as normal. And apparently in her first inauguration, I didn't remember this, but she said she would abide by this law and all these other ones related to cross-strait relations.
Oh, I see. And this legislator just dumps this on her a few days before her second inauguration.
Yeah. There's a second possibility on the DPP side, I think, is that she may have something else planned that could be big for the inauguration.
Right.
There's some historical precedent, I think, for either way, that she's being cautious or because sometimes at major events, like right after the election, she makes a statement to BBC that Taiwan's already independent.
Yeah, that's DPP like policy.
Yeah. So, but the one that I think you're referring to is the TPP.
Yeah, and that was the one I wanted to get to. The Taiwan People's Party, headed by Ko Wen-je, who's the mayor of Taipei.
Yeah, they came out and said they were for it and likened supporting the existing law to treason. That's a big green jump for them.
Yep, especially the second half of that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they've been accused of being pro-blue by people on the green side especially. And of course, Ke surrounded himself with a lot of blue advisors. So I guess something like 2/3 of the people in his backing him. And there's a lot of light blues in the TPP, for whom this thing would probably be acceptable. I don't think any of them want to see Taiwan, quote unquote, unified in their lifetime.
Yeah.
So you're right. It's a very curious touchstone to see what everyone thinks.
I think it's also interesting in that the TPP, first of all, it was the entire caucus came forward and announced this.
Right.
Ko Wen-je was nowhere to be seen.
That's very interesting.
And interestingly, I went to the TPP Facebook page, and if you go through their photos, you see that it's been a long time since they posted anything up with Ko Wen-je.
Well, he was up last 2 weeks ago, apologizing for what was it, the fire?
Yeah,
yeah, and that's the
TPP.
party.
That's his mayor.
That's his mayor, but even still, he belongs to the party that advocates good governance. It did look good. Mm-hmm. That was not a good look.
Yeah. But I kind of get the sense here. I mean, I think this is a momentous one, that they took a stand now, because up until now, as you and I have noted, they've been the party of, apple pie and mom, good governance, and they haven't taken really any stands on anything controversial that says anything really outside of, they just simply copied and pasted Tsai Ing-wen's policy, cross-strait policies. So now they've actually said something. And I think and they also went down, and I think they announced it in Jiayi. They were down there for campaigning in a by-election for a TPP candidate. And to me, I feel like the TPP is you're starting to get, now they've got a long way before they're a totally coherent political entity. I mean, they got a long way to go on that. But we're starting to see shades of outline as to an independent identity for the party, and a unique ideology, a unique vision. It's starting to get little hints of that. And having Ko Wen just step back a bit, I think, is a good idea, because it gives the rest of the party a chance to sort of grow and breathe. So, unlike the PFP where James Song was basically everywhere all the time.
Yeah. Well, they have to move towards the mainstream too, and this is something the mainstream is can be supportive of. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then Johnny Chang also was out this week with another statement asking China to stop threatening Taiwan. The chairman of the KMT.
Yeah.
So, the KMT is kind of trying to grope its way back to the mainstream, and of course, the other parties have to find themselves there too, or they'll be out. I mean, the TPP is going to be the Taiwan People's Party is going to be a fringe light blue party if it doesn't start grabbing issues like this and making noise.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And it's going to be a Taipei party too, which is even worse.
Yeah. So that's why I thought it was relevant that they were all down in Chiayi.
Yeah. Yeah. Showing that they actually know there's a place outside of Taipei.
Yeah. Did you see in, speaking of Johnny Chang's comments,
Mm-hmm.
I found those really interesting because you'll notice that he actually started talking up a bit. See if I remember what he basically said that the 92 consensus was good during the Ma era and built better relations with China.
Right.
Now, that plus he also accused the Thai government of leaning too far toward the U.S. And he said during the pandemic, Taiwan should be a bit more neutral.
Yeah, yeah. That's standard.
Now this, right, exactly. Exactly. That's standard KMT line stuff.
Yeah.
Both of those issues, when he was campaigning to be chair and right after he was elected, he openly talked about improving relations with the United States and leaning more toward them. And he said that the 92 consensus was going to be, reconsidered. And so this says to me that there's that reform committee that's working right now on formulating a new cross-strait policy.
Mm-hmm.
This says to me that Johnny Chang is basically being reined in by the party, more hardliner people. He wants to go, I think he's a pragmatist. And so I think that a lot of the things he was saying before was where he hoped things would go. And his comments the other day feels to me like he's been reined in a bit. Does that make sense? Maybe.
I understand what you're saying, yeah, but the way I see it, these comments are all compatible. I mean, moving towards a more neutral situation is actually can be interpreted as moving away from China, but casting it in a pro-KMT way, if you know what I'm saying.
True. Yeah.
So even the KMT advocating neutrality towards China is progress towards the center.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what he's actually doing, I mean, the way I would see this is that he's struggling to find a language that can accommodate the hardliners while moving towards the mainstream.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And this will take him some time.
Yeah. I'm very curious to see what that reform committee is going to come out with.
Yeah, me too. Speaking of the KMT and governance and the South, what's happening in Kaohsiung? Kaohsiung Mayor Han Guoyu is going to face a recall vote on what? 666.
That's right.
On June 6th.
That's hilarious.
So the recall, you and I were talking about this before. The math is kind of funky. And we got some great input on that from Kat Thomas. Kat, if you're listening, we love you.
Yep, we do.
And, and she pointed out that the numbers that Han, who called for his followers to refrain from going to the polls, that actually doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
The key point is how many DPP voters. How did you explain that to me, Donovan?
Well, essentially, the way the newspapers normally describe the vote is that you need 25% of the electorate to come out,
right,
for it to be valid, and the majority has to vote for the recall for it to go into effect.
Right.
Well, so I came out with this theory that maybe Han's call for his supporters to not come out and vote in the recall was to try and depress the turnout to below that 25% margin. Well, Kat pointed out something which basically kicked the crap out of my theory, is that the percentage of people voting yes on the recall has to be higher than 25% of the electorate. So whether Han's supporters come out or not, his call for his supporters to not show up isn't going to reduce the turnout on the yes side. So I went back and came up, and actually went and watched his video to try and figure out what he was doing. And I have come up with actually a totally different theory. I don't think this is a clever political move. He came out with that video, and it was, Hanguo Yu speaking from the heart. And I think what he's doing is he's had this theme for a long time that politics is dirty and nasty,
And who would know better?
right.
I mean, he's worked.
But
with some
essentially, he was saying to his followers, don't just live your lives. Don't bother getting involved in this, dirty politics kind of thing. He didn't exactly say it that way, but that's essentially the implication. And so I think what it was is he was letting down his supporters gently, keeping up his cred with them as somebody who's above the dirty, nasty politics.
Ah, right.
I think that, and also if his supporters go out to the polls, there's going to be trouble. I think really what's going on is this is him shoring up his relationship with his followers and letting them down gently. Because the math, if you look on Nathan Battow's Frozen Garlic blog, he has a number there, which is the yes plus turnout number, which are the percentage of the electorate that'll probably go out and vote yes. And he analyzed a bunch of polls, and it's all 30 some odd percent. And that, I think, does not even include the people. I think he's actually only taking the percentage of the population who's saying they definitely are going to vote. And I've seen at least one poll where there was a separate number of likely or considering voting. So it's looking pretty solid that the Han recall is going to pass. It's going to happen.
That would be amazing. So who's going to run then? I mean, because we have a whole new election, it doesn't default to the deputy.
So you had some really good ideas on the DPP side. We were talking before the show.
Yeah, I was hoping they'll send down Su Jiatren to run because he has the right working class vibe, and that was where what's his name, Chen Qimai failed.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of he doesn't have the right working class vibe to get elected in Kaohsiung. And Su Jiatren's from the south. If you recall, he ran against Jason Hu here in Taichung before Lin Jialong did, and he lost by like 1% of the vote. He's a really good politician. He runs a great campaign. He's got lots of energy, lots of experience. Didn't he used to be the Pingdong County magistrate, the county chief? Yeah. So he's got he knows that. I think he'd be a great choice. I just don't think the DPP is going to pick him. I think they're going to go with Chen Qimai again.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Su Jiatren would be a much better choice. Who's
the KMT going to run? They're going to run Han again?
No.
That would be fun.
That would be fun. I've seen the speculation, and I've seen a bunch of articles which basically are pitching Johnny Chang, Jiang Jizan, and Eric Chu, Zhu Lilun.
To run for Kaohsiung.
Those, and I've seen multiple articles all speculating on those too. I've seen some other names bandied about Wang Jinping, the current deputy mayor, Li Sichuan, and someone else who's escaping my mind right now. I think it would be, the speculation was that if Johnny Chang ran, that would help him in the next chair race next year, because he only won him in the by-election. So he's, I don't buy that. And also, he's got a pretty cushy position with a very popular legislator in the Fengyuan district of Taichung. I think it would just be a distraction, and there's a very good chance he'd lose, and I'm pretty sure he knows that.
Yeah, I don't see him doing that.
So he'd probably be a good candidate.
Yep.
But I don't see him doing it. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. I don't think, why would they send Zhu Lirun? There's got to be, but you know what? Wang Jinping is no longer in the limelight. He'd be ideal, right? And he's a faction politician from Kaohsiung. He's a former KMT heavyweight. He ran for chair. He's the unofficial head of the Southern legislators in the KMT. Those days are gone.
Mm-hmm.
Have you even heard a word said about him?
Nope, except as a potential candidate down there. Someone who is speculating on it.
Right. Maybe they'll get Guo Timing.
Yeah, but he's not KMT anymore. He could run as an independent, though, or for the TPP. Wang Jinping, I think he won't. And the reason why is he was directly elected as a legislator, and he was, of course, the speaker
Right.
for a gazillion years.
Yeah.
But the last one or two or three times, I forget exactly. I think it was the last one or two times, he ended up going as a party list.
Yeah. The last couple of times.
Rather than directly elected.
Right.
And that smells to me like he was thinking he'd lose because Kaohsiung is so green.
Maybe.
Maybe. I mean, maybe he just felt like he was old and, I didn't want to campaign anymore.
He didn't want to go through the trouble of campaigning, yeah.
But the thing is that, I think, I don't know. I feel like he probably won't. Eric Chu, he's too much of a northerner. I think he might run because he doesn't have a job right now. And everyone's talking about him running for chair again next year, which, he was a mediocre chair for KMT chair before. I mean, he wasn't terrible. He wasn't Udoni,
right.
But he wasn't brilliant either.
Hey, why don't they send down Udoni?
Oh, that's right. That was the other name.
Yeah.
He was the mayor of Kaohsiung years ago.
Yeah, he was the mayor of Kaohsiung, yeah.
Yeah. And I just laughed at that one.
But they just keep recycling the same people, though. Where are the new guys coming up?
Well, they've got Johnny Chang. They've got Jiang Wanan.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Yeah.
Those
and
are
Ho
the
Yo-E,
two
but he's been silent.
Yeah,
focusing on COVID.
Did you notice he finally came out and he started hitting the government the other day? The central government?
Really?
He's usually just focused on his job, but he started taking pot shots. Now, here's the thing that I thought was interesting. This was all Chinese language media stuff. This was not.
Ho Yo-E, by the way, is the mayor of New Taipei City and very popular KMT politician.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
By far, he's head and shoulders above the rest of the KMT at this point.
Yep.
But what he came out and he hit the central government on the exact same day that I saw a whole bunch of articles speculating that the health minister and the head of the CECC, as there's a lot of speculation about him running either for New Taipei mayor or as Taipei city mayor. And all this speculation came out on the same day. Enoch Wu said he'd support him as well.
Wow.
And the very same day, and again today I saw, he attacked the central government health authorities who are super popular right now, and he said they didn't come out with a handbook, and he said either they won't or they're incapable of it, and he said that's why the new Taipei city government came out with this handbook. He came out again today. I saw in the press. Maybe he said it yesterday, but I saw it today in the press. He accused the Chen Shizhong and the health authorities of having no standard operating procedure, and said New Taipei has had to come up with its own.
That's actually not surprising.
Mm-hmm. I just thought the timing was very interesting because he's usually very quiet on central government issues. So, I mean, I can't prove there's a correlation, but it just seems like, wow, the timing.
Oh, well, speaking of the central government, the DPP took another whack at the irrigation and fishermen's and agriculture cooperatives this week, which it's been, we talked a lot about this on the show last year, centralizing the irrigation cooperatives and the farm cooperatives.
Well, the irrigation associations have already been nationalized.
Yeah, they've already been nationalized.
It's happening this year. Yeah.
Yep. They've been struggling with those for years because those irrigation associations have long been an important source of patronage funds for local politicians. And so, way back in the 1980s, to run for the head of the irrigation cooperative, you had to spend as much money as someone running in a U.S. senatorial election. Mm-hmm. So those were the days. Is that also
true of the farmers and fishers associations as well, I think?
I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure it's the irrigation. It's one of those associations that was super expensive, but because they're all involved in infrastructure one way or another. So there's a lot of money that flows out. And also they give out loans. The KMT rearranged all that in the 1970s so that the loans used to be under the control of the farmers, and then it moved them to under control of the associations. It changed all that in the 1970s, and the result was that there were huge pools of money that could then go out to the patronage networks at the local level, which the KMT was cultivating during the one-party state era. So all this has been a long, long struggle for the pro-democracy side to get these organizations under control and stop them from becoming a source of, power for the pro-China side.
So
Hello?
yeah, so the I thought you were going to say more.
No.
So they've come out with this new. When I first saw it, I didn't think really anything of it. The DPP has come out with a new insurance, which covers farmers, fishers, fishermen, and people work in those kind of businesses. So it's an insurance program, so that if there's natural disasters or whatever, that there's an insurance fund for them, which sounds pretty much like a standard sort of DPP, a policy, and it
Right.
makes some sense because the social, the safety net right now doesn't exactly cover the farmers and the fishers quite as well as people who work in offices. But then I saw in it, and let me see if I can find the exact quote. It says here, so the farmers and fishers associations plus insurance companies will be able to handle this insurance system. But in this, so in theory now, that means a lot more money going through the fishermen's associations and the farmers associations. But here was the line that I saw. The council may conduct unannounced inspections of the associations whose executives must not evade inspections or provide council officials with false or incomplete files or reports, the act says.
I wonder if there's a punishment specified.
You and I talked before, I think last year, about the DPP is probably eventually going to nationalize them.
Right.
But this could be their move, not nationalizing them. And then basically now, they can they can do a spot audit at any time.
Well, think about how that builds a case for nationalizing. Oh my God, we did a spot audit. Everything is a mess.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, the central government has to take over these systems.
Yeah.
This is a.
And in the meantime, it makes it harder for them to engage in normal patronage activities because now they're being audited at any time, any place, anywhere, kind of thing.
If it has teeth, if it actually is done, and it's not just, the Potemkin audits where they call you up beforehand to make sure you're ready for the audit. Yeah, that's a big if.
I think under a DPP government, I think it won't be a Potemkin system.
Yeah, we hope. Well, we got some. I think the other big news, there was a poll out on gay marriage, but it was conducted by gay marriage groups. It was conducted by pro-gay marriage groups. So take it with a grain of salt. But basically, it said most people are unaffected by the same-sex marriage bill. And so 93% of Taiwanese, according to this poll, which was, this is from a Taipei Times discussion, says the policy has no effect on them, which is really good news.
Mm-hmm.
And only negative effects were only cited by 3.7%. It's hard to imagine what that could be. So it's pretty much like what we were saying before, right? What many of us advocates for this law have said over the years, that if you just do it, everyone will get used to it, and then you can change the law to make it. Because right now it's not quite the same as marriage that straight people enjoy.
Yeah.
So
there was a couple of things I found slightly disheartening in there.
Yeah.
It was something like 2/3 approximately of people who said if their friends, family, coworkers come out as gay, they're fine with it. But something like 45, 47% or something like that said if it was their own child, they would have trouble dealing with it.
Yeah, 47%, but that's progress.
It's progress, yeah. And
it's progress over, generational progress, right?
And then there was another thing in there, which said it was actually a majority. It was a little over 50% said that they did not think that gay couples should be able to have children using modern reproductive techniques.
Oh, let me see where that number is. Oh, that's terrible.
I think it was 51% to 47 or something like that. So it was
Yeah, here it is, 50.1. Yeah, well, 42% were in favor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's, another decade of this, gays will become normal. Those numbers will rise.
Yeah.
So gay marriage will become normal, and those numbers will rise. Everyone will get used to it. They'll, right now it only said 48% would accept gay couples kissing in public,
Mm-hmm.
right? All these numbers will rise. Everyone will get used to it, and eventually it'll change. Right now, the LGBT, the advocates are advocating for equal adoption rights, and
Mm-hmm.
also for recognition of marriages to foreigners whose countries themselves do not allow same-sex marriage. That would be that would be a wonderful move.
Yeah, I actually know people who are, have been impacted by those.
Yes.
And it's a when they passed the bill, it was really disappointing that they made those two exceptions.
Well, baby steps.
Yeah,
it was disappointing, but they'll change it one of these days.
Yeah, I suspect that they included those kind of as a sop to the social conservatives in the DPP.
Right. That's how I see that too.
But the poll results, I mean, as you noted, there's a positive way of looking at it. It was they were a lot better than the referendum results in 2018.
Yes. Yeah. But, you got to take this with a grain of salt because it's a poll from LGBT organizations. So who knows? I mean, it seems to be the numbers put at the bottom seem to be acceptable, right? Error of 3%, 1,086 valid responses from people age 18 and older. But who knows? And the other way to look at it is it's a telephone survey. So it's a landline survey, which means that it's connecting to a rather conservative, a somewhat more conservative element of the population, people who have landlines and don't use mobile phones and live in, So that's another way to look at it positively. So, all right. And one more thing's happening this week. Thursday, the cabinet is going to resign as a group. And you and I were speculating about who is going to get what. You mentioned a bunch of names. Who do you think is going to get what positions in the new cabinet?
Well, I think there was 5 people that I was watching.
Yes.
Everyone's saying that Chen Zhu is going to be moved to the head of the Control Yuan, which has now got this new, also human rights element added to it. So the speculation is she's being moved there. On
Chen Zhu is the former mayor of Kaohsiung, hugely popular, who was moved up to the president's office. I think she became the Secretary General?
Yeah, of the presidential office.
Yeah.
And I mean, she was jailed, and she knows human rights issues well from
she's lived
it. So on the human rights side, I think she's an excellent choice. On the Control Yuan side, I think that would be a terrible choice.
Too partisan,
yeah. And the Control Yuan is one of the 5 branches of government. In theory, it's actually, I think, kind of a cool idea. In theory, the Control Yuan's job is to inspect the government. In other words, to be a watchdog,
right?
To make sure that the government is not corrupt and so on and so forth, and they're doing their job. But all the appointees are partisan. So a lot of the investigations they conduct are highly partisan and suspect.
Right.
And some of them even seem just like personal vendettas. I mean,
right.
So putting in somebody so partisan there, I think, is a bad call.
I agree.
But some of the others, Su Jiaqun, who I think your idea of him running for Kaohsiung mayor is brilliant. But the rumors are that he's going to take over Chen Zhu's place.
Oh, that why would they put him there? He's a great politician. Go ahead.
Yeah, but he's I also, from what I gather, he's a very good administrator, so I could see that too. But I think you're right; he'd be better as Kaohsiung mayor. But and then Xiaobi Kim she was formerly a lawmaker from Hualien, and then she lost to the king of Hualien, Fu Quanxi, who is now being thrown in jail, where he's going to continue to represent his constituents because the court didn't take away his rights. So, but they're planning to. The rumors are that she's going to be moved to representative of Taiwan in Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. Yeah, everyone says that's a good choice. So
Yeah, that's been rumored for a couple of weeks now.
And then two others where I haven't heard any rumors are Lin Feifan, who is one of the leaders of the Sunflower Movement.
Yeah, it's a really good choice.
He's working for them, I think, as a deputy under Chen right now, I think is what he's doing. I've heard exactly what his title is. It's something like deputy. Anyway, maybe it's in the party. He's some kind of deputy executive. Is either for the party or I think it's for the party, not the presidential office.
Oh, okay.
The other one is Enoch Wu,
Okay.
who ran a great campaign but lost to Jiang Wanan, who's one of the rising stars of the KMT. But it was a blue district. But he did well. He's a good-looking guy, got a great background, and so he's kind of a potential rising star for the DPP. So I feel like the DPP has to do something with him.
Right. So you think they're going to find a position for him that'll keep him out in front of the public eye?
I think they'd be stupid if they didn't.
Well, on that happy note, let's end this show. Thank you all for listening tonight, and I hope to have you back next week.
This has been brought to you by the Taiwan Report. For more content like this, become our patron at report.tw.
哎呦，就是那个台湾狗啦，最喜欢我的台湾狗了。
Dan Hand the recall, man. Oh, man. His career is toast after this. But I'd be willing to bet I still think there's a good chance he's going to run for KMT chair next year.
Of course. He's got that name. That's why he's cultivating his followers, right?
Yeah. I think that's what the video is about. I mean...
Yep. Hey, did you press the stop record?
Oh, no, sorry. I'll do that now.